Back with another edition of Orange and Blue today. It's Cecil, Lammey, and Andrew Mason with another Would You Rather, Mace. And this Would You Rather is quite interesting. And it says, would you rather go to the playoffs with Jarrett Stidham playing the whole season or go 5-12, but get clarity on Bo Nix?
Ooh. And clarity, I'm not saying it's necessarily success, right?
It can be good or bad. You just get clarity.
You have data, you know. Like an example of a lack of clarity in retrospect was 2016 Paxton Lynch, 2 starts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, neither start was very good, but it was a small enough sample size to where the offseason became, okay, we have Trevor Siemian, who started most of the season. We have Paxton Lynch. We're going to let them battle it out. And because of that, it turned out to be a draft class that had Deshaun Watson, very good until all the sexual assault stuff. Mitchell Trubisky, okay. Bears did go to the playoffs twice with him. And then some guy named Mahomes.
He's kind of good.
Yeah, but the Broncos sat out that class because, hey, we got Paxton Lynch. We don't know where he's going just yet. We're going to find out. They didn't have clarity, and it's something they've been paying for ever since.
I can't say that I'm mad at Gary Kubiak, but I certainly feel like he put himself ahead of the Broncos when you don't start Paxton Lynch in that finale and you don't even play him when you spend the whole week being like, yeah, he's going to get playing time. Yeah, they're going to split time. And then it turns into, oh, I forgot to play him. Like, I understand it's your last game. You don't want to play the guy that you don't like, that you didn't want, but it's not about you. It's about the health of this franchise. And it's really that Paxton Lynch decision and non-decision of just not playing him, Mace, that still plagues this team. Hopefully Bo Nix fixes that, but it plagues this team to this day.
Yeah. I mean, there was the whole thing of how he never got into that Raiders game in week 17.
Mm-hmm.
And he brushed it off as an oversight. But forget about, he could have played half. He should have played the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
You were eliminated from the playoffs, and you needed to find out. And he made an emotional call. Was it selfish? Yes, but I don't think he was thinking in terms of selfish terms, except to say, I want to win my last game, as head coach. And he's never been a head coach again. But, man, the thing is, though, Cease, would that game have changed anything? I don't think it would have, because it would have been, he's had 3 starts. He played part of another game. 3.5 games. We don't know just yet. The way to find out would have been Paxton Lynch playing extensively, but the other minefield that you had there was a veteran-laden team that had just won the Super Bowl the previous year. And let's just say Paxton Lynch wasn't winning anybody over in that locker room. So that might have been a tough sell for Aqib Talib, Chris Harris Jr., TJ Ward, Darian Stewart, Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, Derek Wolfe. God, that defense was so good.
Yeah, that defense was stacked, which leads me to the okay, well, again, it's not about them. It's about the health of your team. When you make that call on a first-round quarterback, you got to play him. I just looked up Josh Rosen's stats. It was 13 starts and a 3-10 record. The flippin' Cardinals got something right that the Broncos did not. And I know we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but it plays into the Jarrett Stidham, Bo Nix thing. You need a dozen games. Let's just use that number, Mace. 10, 12, whatever that number is. Josh Rosen got 13, and he was 3-10, and the Cardinals made the right call.
There was the clarity right there. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it sort of goes beyond numbers. It's also leadership, ability, presence, all that. because there are scenarios where you could say Bo Nix's numbers aren't very good, but if he is absorbing the offense, ingesting it, applying it, and developing as a good leader, then that's enough to say, okay, we're going to run it back and see where it goes, right? Josh Rosen, by all accounts, didn't show a lot of those qualities, which is one reason why the Arizona Cardinals were so willing to move on from him. And honestly, that was part of the critique of Josh Rosen going into the 2018 draft, remember? So if Bo Nix doesn't work out, but you get clarity, I don't think it's like that. I think it's that I think if he doesn't work out and you find out right away, it is that the critiques about his velocity and arm strength end up coming home to roost a little bit, and he struggles to get the ball from A to B. Well, and the accuracy doesn't translate. We don't want to think about that, but there's a scenario where it doesn't work.
It's all part of the discussion. I was asked by Mike Evans a week ago, like, how does it not work with Bo Nix? And I was like, well, it's not going to be the lack of effort or work ethic.
Mm-hmm. So there won't be Paxton Lynch then, like that.
So we'll scratch that off. Yeah. I don't think it'll be leadership, right? Lack of leadership. We could say that with Rosen. Rosen could have gotten more time.
Yes.
He could have. Now, I remember talking to my Dolphins guys when he was in Miami. I was like, why isn't Josh playing? And they're like, he's really dumb. Like football sense, not a personal sense. But like, okay, is that going to be the case with Bo Nix? No. Maybe the arm strength thing, but you and I have seen him on a pro field multiple times now.
He can push the ball down the seam.
So, he can get it there.
Yeah. Though maybe the one thing you're concerned about is those small percentage of throws that are deep and outside the numbers. But is that enough? I mean, Drew Brees didn't have those clubs in his bag.
Right.
And he ran this offense and worked out pretty well. So I think it's important to say that we're talking about clarity. We're focused on the negative, but there's also there's a positive. Bo Nix could have a really good season and this team could go 5-12.
Mm-hmm.
He could have a season in which he hits all the markers as far as his development. You know, that he's ingesting, processing, and implying the information. He's learning from his mistakes. I mean, 5-12, for all we know, could be this team starts 0-7. Maybe Bo Nix isn't the starter at the start of the season, but if it's Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson, you struggle early. And maybe he gets out there in week 3 or week 4 and you lose a few more games. You're 0-7, but then you go 5-5 down the stretch. I'd be fine with that. Like if Bo Nix showed that he could be the answer, and if he's hitting the mileposts along the way. So is 5-12 going to be painful to experience? Yes. An 8th straight losing season, a 9th straight season out of the playoffs. Yes, that would be painful. But the benefits you get from that kind of year, I think, exceed the benefits you get if Jarrett Stidham is your starter the entire season and you squeak in at 10-7, because that type of season cease. Unless Jarrett Stidham is just somebody nobody expects. If the Broncos are in the playoffs with Jarrett Stidham, it feels like the Tyrod Taylor Buffalo season of 2017. 9-7, getting in the last seed, but Buffalo was smart enough to know this is not a long-term solution here, and they let Tyrod Taylor go, and they went fishing in the draft, and they reeled in Josh Allen, who's worked out okay.
Yeah, and they moved up and they got their franchise quarterback. So for me, the clarity on Bo Nix, it's the 5-12. You know, maybe a would you rather would be a little more painful if we said 4-5. So you only got 9 games instead of 17 games. Because for me, it's the number of games. It's not the win or loss. Yeah. It's the, wait a second, 5-12. That means he starts from day one. I like that. Whether the record is 5-12 or 12-5. So maybe we should addendum during the show of fewer games for Bo Nix.
Yeah, maybe, because you mentioned Josh Rosen 13. That's why I kind of hypothetically said, 12, 13 games. 12, 13 games, right? How many games is enough to get clarity on Bo Nix? How many would make you feel good? Like, what's the minimum that you'd want?
10.
Okay.
I want
10.
10. Part of me wants to say like 8, half the year or whatever, but no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm greedy. I want 10. I want 10 plus.
You say 10, I'd say 12. Which means I want him in no later than game 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
No later than, I believe it's the Charger game, right? That's the second of those 2 home games, early October. It goes Raiders and Chargers. Yeah, that's week 6. That's the latest I want him in.
Well, what's interesting about that, Mason, I'll pull out my handy dandy note card because I wrote down our records when we did our schedule predictor. I'll see if the camera can focus on it. So I wrote down your record and my record. The problem with him starting in week 5 or week 6, I had him as 3-2. You had him as 2-3. Is that
okay?
the
Week
time
5.
to start him
so
then?
let's do week 5. So what do we have? Where do we have him after 4 games?
You had him as 1-3. I had him as 2-2.
And I think I said when we predicted the schedule, I had him 0-3, and then that week when they're in all likelihood training on the East Coast somewhere, probably away from Denver, getting away from it all, focusing on themselves. That's the week that I suggest maybe you make the move, you hand off the baton.
You give it to the kid.
And I had 0-3, and I had him winning his first start. And part of the reason why I have them winning Bo Nix's first start, when I went through the schedule and said, okay, the first start comes in week 4, is because there's always an advantage when you step in as the unknown. Paxton Lynch stepped in as the unknown midway through that week 4 game in Tampa in 2016. The Bucs didn't know what to expect.
He looked
Paxton
good.
Lynch, pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Then Atlanta spends a week dissecting the film. Paxton Lynch didn't look good.
Unless he was out of shotgun. I'll not necessarily die on that hill, but when he was in shotgun, I think it was 13 of 15 for 150 yards against the team that went to the Super Bowl. So yeah, he sucked against Atlanta, but that's because Gary was trying to have him work under center.
Well, the other thing also, I mean, this is where kind of the rigidity of what was going on schematically worked against the Broncos.
Right. It's a good way to put it, by the way.
A couple years later at the combine, you had John Elway saying that a short quarterback needed to work out of the shotgun, and then saying he didn't believe that an offense worked best when there was a lot of shotgun. There need to be under center elements. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, well, not that they would have had a chance at Kyler Murray, but not happening.
There goes that.
Yeah, so I thought there was a little bit of inflexibility there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in terms of what the Broncos were seeking at quarterback. I'm not saying Paxton Lynch would have been good, but could he have been functional? Yeah. And by the way, it's not everybody is that inflexible. Let's look back to Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan with RG3 back in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Whole mess of shotgun and pistol.
Yep.
Running that offense.
They had the Legion of Boom on the ropes, man.
Looked pretty good until RG3's knee went out.
And then he tried to go back out there. That was, oh
God.
I do not want to watch
that. Was malpractice. That was
mm-hmm.
That was one of the more disturbing visuals I've seen from an NFL game.
Yep.
RG3's knee. But
yeah.
So anyway, so you got to meet him. That's why, by the way, what something Sean Payton said after drafting Bo Nix about if he's more comfortable in shotgun adjusting, that was actually pretty promising, because I think you take the time right now to work on the under center stuff. But if you realize that's going to be a little while in coming, gun it up, baby.
Yeah. Even if Tom Brady go 65% shotgun.
Yeah, gun it up, and if you want to have a back behind Bo Nix, pistol. Mm-hmm. Pistol. Remember, pistol ended up being the compromise for Peyton Manning and Gary Kubiak in 2015.
Right. Much needed compromise.
Yes.
It can work. You have to be flexible. And by the way, you have them going 0-3 and then winning 5 in a row.
With Bo Nix at quarterback.
Week 9 with Bo Nix at quarterback. Yep. Yep.
Well, this is another thing. And let's say it's not week 3. Let's say it's week 4. Or not week 4, week 5. Let's say it's after the 4th game, after the first quarter of the season. First of all,
against the Raiders.
The quarter poll is always an actual time to evaluate. Teams do that. Sean Payton does it. John Fox did it. Second of all, October is easily the most benign month on the schedule for the Broncos. 3 home games, Raiders, Chargers, Thursday night in New Orleans, and then Carolina. So 3 home games. The Superdome's a tough place to play, but the Saints, I think we can say, are a very mid team. And certainly Sean Payton's going to be amped up for that on Thursday Night Football.
Sure.
That, to me, is the stretch where if you want to give Bo Nix some confidence, get some good reps under his belt, get him ready for what is to come. If you didn't start him week 1, I think October is a good time to ramp him up. And then you build some confidence, you build some positive momentum, build some experience. It gets tough in November when it goes Baltimore, Kansas City. Even Atlanta at home doesn't look easy at all.
Atlanta. And then on the road for the Raiders. You're not going to win a game in November. So build your momentum in October. And November is going to be November rain. Yeah. As we mentioned on the schedule release show.
But never mind the darkness. We still can find a way because nothing lasts forever, even cold November rain.
Even that cold November rain. Yes. But this whole would you rather, like, I don't want any sort of mixed messages from the room. You took a first-round quarterback that you're excited for. That was, number 3 on your board or whatever. Number 1 on our hearts. He's Bo Nix. If Jarrett Stidham goes out there and takes you to the playoffs and looks okay, outside of him looking great, you just create confusion in the room. And I don't like that. Plus, Stidham's a free agent after this year. And I don't like the idea of having to pay another quarterback. Are you still paying on the other guy? Oh, yeah. And then you got to pay this guy to keep him around because you did what now? And you've got Nix on a rookie deal. You're wasting time. Burning daylight, Mace.
Is there any kind of organizational value to being a playoff team, even if it's with a quarterback who is not around for the long term?
No. And it's been a drought like we haven't experienced in the last 50 years with this team.
And that's why this question is worth asking, because is there value to being a playoff team? Yes, I think there is, in terms of what you're trying to do long-term, in terms of the program that you're trying to build. Is there greater value to using this year to develop Bo Nix and find out if he can be the guy, so you can make better decisions going forward? I mean, I'll throw this out there. Let's say the clarity on Bo Nix you get isn't great. I mean, do you then toss your hat in the Dak Prescott ring if he becomes available in 2025?
I'm saying Nix gets 2 years.
Okay. I'd like to see him get 2 years too.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if he's a washout, I mean, I don't think he will. I think he will show more than enough playing this year to where you feel good about the markers that he's hit and you want to keep turning the page.
Mm-hmm.
So is that clarity? Is that enough clarity for you?
Well, I think the clarity that we need is 2 years away. And here's the clarity, Mace, going back to the Mike Evans question. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not saying Bo Nix is a sure thing. It's the NFL. Nobody's a sure thing. But it's like, I don't see failure. I see a limited ceiling, perhaps. Mm-hmm. So the clarity we need is, where's his ceiling? His floor is really high. And you could make the argument, maybe outside of Michael Penix, he's got the highest floor of any quarterback in this draft. Mm-hmm. He does not have the highest ceiling. That's Jaden Daniels. But where is floor and ceiling, like real close? Or is floor like right here, and then the ceiling's it's higher than we thought?
Okay.
Or is it more limited? That's the real clarity we need.
What if you find out the ceiling is Derek Carr?
You won't find that out this year. I don't think so. You'll find it out in a couple of years where it's like, he can only get you so far. You're going to need more around him.
Okay. Do you think then we really do find out the ceiling this year?
No. Nope.
Okay.
And that's why I think he gets more than 1 year, because Jared Goff is the example I use for Bo Nix. Jared Goff almost got to the Super Bowl. Well, he did get to the Super Bowl with the Rams, and he lost it because Belichick used a Vic Fangio defense against him. Way to go, Vic. But it's like, okay, I mean, I think we've seen the ceiling for Jared Goff, right? But Jared Goff could still win a Super Bowl.
The ceiling for Jared Goff, he hasn't been a part of a team that's won the Super Bowl. But the ceiling for Jared Goff is he's good enough to have you contend. And that's all you can ask. I think too much is made of the one thing, the Super Bowl, right? I mean, obviously it's the goal, but in terms of defining success of a quarterback, I think too much is made of that. Is Phillip Rivers a failure because the Chargers never got to a Super Bowl? No. He was objectively a very good to great quarterback. Matt Ryan a failure with the Falcons? No. I mean, they got to a Super Bowl. They were a very good team for a while. Jared Goff, I think it's interesting you mention him because do you recall how many games it took for Jared Goff to get on the field?
No, I don't.
As a rookie. He played in game 10, week 11.
Okay.
Didn't play at all the first 9 games, started the last 7 for the Rams.
And we're talking about the number 1 overall pick.
And, oh, by the way, when he came into the lineup, the Rams were 4-5. They went 0-7 with Jared Goff, if you do the QB wins thing. No, but very specifically here, they went 0-7. He completed 54.6% of his passes.
It's not great, Bob.
He had more interceptions, 7, than touchdown passes, 5. Okay. His passer rating was 63.6. His ESPN QBR was 18.3.
Woo!
Okay. But you got the right coaching the following year. I mean, basically, that first year became a write-off because you had Jeff Fisher and his 7-9 BS as the head coach then. And then you bring in Sean McVay, who is maybe the best offensive genius of his generation. And the turnaround is instant. Jared Goff was a Pro Bowler the next year. Jared Goff had 7 interceptions as a rookie. He had 7 interceptions his second year. But he had 5 touchdowns as a rookie. He had 28 touchdown passes in year 2. Mm-hmm. Coaching matters. And also, I would say that because the coaching matters, I don't think Bo Nix's first season is going to go like Jared Goff's. I think it's going to be a lot better.
Right. And we got a show about that too coming up a little bit later during the downtime of like what's the acceptable rookie season for Bo Nix. So we'll get to those numbers, but those are interesting jump off points. But I think the clarity is what, and now some fans, you can tell us in the comment section below. They may choose Jarrett Stidham in the playoffs because it's been so long, Mason. I'm not going to hold that against anybody. Yeah. I'm not going to choose that. But I could see fans being like, I just want to get the playoffs. It's like, okay. But then you're with the playoffs with Jarrett Stidham, who's not going to be here next year. Or shouldn't.
Well, let's talk about a season from Broncos history. And yeah, we're putting this in the can, so we apologize for not responding live. But 1983, John Elway, number 1 overall pick of the Baltimore Colts, trade, of course, the Denver Broncos. We remember Steve DeBerg started that playoff game. John Elway started 10 games that year. DeBerg started 5. Gary Kubiak started 1 as a rookie. So the Broncos went 4-1 in Steve DeBerg's starts, and he had a really, he had a good year for him. Like he had 9 touchdowns and 7 picks. John Elway had 7 and 14. DeBerg's passer rating was 79.9. In those days, that was perfectly fine. John Elway's was 54.9. Whether it's 2024 or 1983, that was not fine. But Elway also had the comeback against Baltimore there in week 15. when the Broncos clinched the playoffs. So it was a weird year because Elway started the season. DeBerg came in relief. They went back to Elway. And then Elway had a bad game in week 16, coldest day in Broncos history at Arrowhead Stadium, December 18th of that year. And then they turned around and started Steve DeBerg in the playoff loss on Christmas Eve in Seattle. I hope it doesn't go like that. Okay.
Right.
That sort of back and forth. I mean, I'm far more in favor of the idea that a lot of people think is crazy, and that is give Bo Nix a possession each half if he's not ready to be the starter and get all the work, than the sort of back and forth that the Broncos had in 1983 when Elway starts and then Steve DeBerg is quite often coming in as a relief pitcher. That's not good for business. That's not good for anybody. I don't want to see that.
Yeah, I don't want to see that either. And by the way, I don't think it's that big of a deal for him to get series, right?
A lot of people are
history.
Well, here's the other thing. I mean, first of all, this is not the Craig Morton, Roger Staubach, or Sean Moore, Tommy Maddox alternating plays thing, okay? And we're not even saying alternating series. We're saying one series a half. Also, NFL quarterback development is not flawless, right?
No.
Why is it like this sacred cow thing where you don't want to disrupt the flow of the team? You can sub at every other position, but somehow quarterback is sacrosanct.
Right.
I sorry. The interesting thing about Sean Payton is he is an outside the box guy. I mean, this is somebody who was trying to find all these ways to get Taysom Hill in there. He had Drew Brees, Hall of Fame bound quarterback, and he was finding packages for Taysom Hill. Okay. With
Brees lined up wide.
Yes. Brees having very little athleticism at that point in his career. Drew Brees in year 19, year 20 lined up, split out because he wanted to get Taysom Hill on the field. So that's, one of the reasons why I suggest that is because Sean Payton is the type of guy who might be apt to think differently about this sort of thing. To say, okay, it's been done this way over and over from the quarterback development, but why? Sometimes you got to ask yourself the why and then ask the why not. Question everything. It's okay to do that.
It's perfectly fine to do that and to find a way, because at the end of the day, Mace, I'm voting clarity. That's all
I'm voting clarity too, even though I would love to see this team in the playoffs. Hey, I'm selfish. I'd love to cover a playoff game again. I don't care where it is. Don't care if it's on a Monday night. Don't care if it's on a Sunday morning. Don't give a crap. I'd love to cover another playoff game.
We are some chatty blankety-blankers because I'm going to bring up something that we haven't talked about in this episode. Not only would it confuse the fan base and maybe even confuse the front office, but what about that locker room? You and I have been around split locker rooms. We know the guys like, okay, Trev, guys like Trevor. They didn't like Paxton.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see. And Jarrett is beloved by his teammates. Like he's a card. He's a character.
They like him.
And they go to the playoffs with a guy that the locker room already loves. You're just making it tougher for Bo Nix. And Jarrett Stidham's not winning a Super Bowl as a starter. Sorry, everybody. So for me, it is clarity because I don't want confusion in the locker room or in the fan base, or the front office, or anywhere.
You feel pretty strongly about Jarrett Stidham not being the next Nick Foles then, huh?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
That's just a story we get once in a while.
I know. Never bet on the outlier. It's what I say. You don't bet on that. It's like that's why you don't base your plans for team building around a 7th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
If it works out, great. Brock Purdy makes everybody feel good. But remember, Brock Purdy was not the primary plan. He was the contingency. The plan was Trey Lance.
Oh, yeah. And the plan went bye-bye.
Yes.
So the plan is Bo Nix.
Mm-hmm.
See if it can work out.
And that's the first thing. You explore that all the way. And even though it would be nice to break the playoff streak, the more important and the better season for the Broncos is the season in which you get clarity on Bo Nix, rather than the one where you sneak in with Jarrett Stidham, but you probably wave goodbye to him a few months later anyway. Now, I'll throw this. I threw this with Jarrett Stidham. It's a different question with Zach Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Because Zach Wilson has some significant traits. And I do believe if Wilson did well, if he could break the habits, the drifting, the meandering in the sacks, the kind of things we talked about with Russell Wilson, if he could break some of those habits and become a more accurate quarterback with the velocity and arm strength that he possesses, and you're a playoff team, and Zach Wilson is the reason why, it's actually a very different discussion. Because Zach Wilson, respectfully to Bo Nix, could be a quarterback of the future. I don't think it's likely, but he could be. I don't see it with Jarrett Stidham.
Right. Here's the nightmare scenario, Mace, as we wrap up today's program. You don't start Jarrett Stidham, you start Bo Nix, but you do not get clarity. It's a Trevor Lawrence rookie year.
Oh,
that I would hate. I would hate. Now, I don't think it happens because I think you do get signs. And Trevor Lawrence was held back by Urban Meyer, but he didn't do anything.
Worst head coach in NFL history
until the season finale. And then he was like, oh, now he looks like Trevor Lawrence, kind of.
Yeah. Well, remember that season finale. Urban Meyer has been forced out. They play the Colts. They knock the Colts out of the playoffs. And not just that, they beat them down.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a fluke. It was a 60-minute butt whipping. And Trevor Lawrence played well. Like you came out of that thinking, man, if this team had been competently coached for most of the year, who knows what they could have done.
Right.
One of the great wasted seasons in NFL history. Jacksonville, Urban Meyer. God.
What are you thinking, Shad? What are you thinking?
Trevor Lawrence is still kind of paying for it.
He is. Mm-hmm. It stunted him for a bit.
It did. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think there'd be the same concerns about him after last year when he was injured. He wasn't hurt down the stretch. He was injured. That's why the Jaguars weren't a playoff team last year.
Mm-hmm.
That started when he got injured. And he's trying to play through it. And there's a reason why they brought in Mac Jones, because Mac Jones has actually been a quarterback who started in the playoffs. They feel like they wanted to get the backup situation better. And they didn't want to get caught like they did last year. But yeah, that's the nightmare scenario is where you don't know and you miss the playoffs. Then what did you get? What was it all for? This cannot be a wasted year. 5-12 with clarity on Bo Nix is not a wasted year. Nope. 5-12 when Bo Nix starts 6 games and you still don't know, that's a wasted year. That's terrible. 10-7 making the playoffs with Jarrett Stidham, it's not a completely wasted year because you did get something of value, which was getting back to the playoffs. That's part of everybody learning how to win at this level, especially the young players. But at the same time, it still leaves you in that ether that you're trying to escape. So yes, the ideal outcome is 5-12 in clarity.
Well, we've learned how to win on YouTube, Mace. How do people help us win on YouTube?
By liking,
comment,
sharing,
subscribe,
and hitting that notification bell
so that you never miss a vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil, Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.